Hello, everyone, and welcome to 3 o'clock with SOC. Give me just a second so I can welcome those who want to access the program in Spanish to our conference call with Spanish interpretation. Buenas tardes, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí en 3 p.m. con SOC, hoy el día 6 de agosto. Como siempre, ustedes pueden escuchar el programa en español a través de una llamada de conferencia. Y el número aparece aquí en la pantalla y es 646-749-3122. Y el código para entrar es 779-328-221. Y ahora les voy a dejar con nuestra querida Marlene, quien va a ser nuestra moderadora de hoy. Thank you for letting me do that. I'm going to leave you in the hands of our beloved Marlene, who is going to be the moderator for today. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hey. Welcome to 3 o'clock with SOC today. My name is Marlene Zahran, and I'm here with you. As many of you know me, I'm the forum coordinator for SOC, but I am also the COVID-19 project coordinator as well. I'm here to moderate for you today, and I'd like to just begin by saying that our staff and platforms are available to you at all times. You can call SOC at 414-672-8090 or go to SOC at socmilwaukee.org. You can also visit our website at www.socmilwaukee.org to get all information updates about civic, COVID, and census information right now. And we have all types of resources for you on there. So I'd like to begin by saying that, today we've got a lot for you to hear. We've got really great discussions coming up. First, we want to kind of know how well our program has been doing. So if you can complete our SOC survey, that would be great for us. So what the SOC survey does, it gives us feedback on how we're doing. You can also include any information that you'd like us to cover, any topics that we haven't covered yet that you'd like for us to talk about on the forum. You can go ahead and fill that survey out, and you can also let us know how well we're doing. That being said, I'm working from home right now, so I'm working virtually. So I don't need to wear a mask because I'm at home. But if I were to be working in an office setting and, my coworkers are around me, I would be wearing a mask. So for today, we have Jamaal E. Smith. He is from the Office of Violence Prevention. He's the Violence Prevention Manager, and he's here today to talk to us about law enforcement reform, OVP, the OVP Blueprint for Peace. So that being said, I'd like to give us a quick disclaimer that the views and opinions shared today do not necessarily reflect those of SOC. So that information has been shared with you today, kind of a quick intro, and now I'm going to pass it over to Tammy Rivera, our Executive Director, who's going to give you our critical update and talk with our guest today.
So glad to have Gabe and Marlene playing greater roles here. I'm sure you all get tired of hearing my voice. It sounds like I always say Charlie Brown's mom, Waka Waka, and I get tired of hearing it. So glad to see always my staff taking greater leadership roles. Folks, this week we're focusing on the theme of law enforcement reform. And so Monday, I gave the official presentation of the CCC. Tuesday, we talked about all of the bodies, groups, organizations, plans addressing law enforcement reform, trying to help you understand that system. Yesterday, we had Molly Collins from the ACLU talk about their work and the ACLU law settlement. Today, I'll bring on Jamaal in just a second. Tomorrow, we have Fred Royal, the president of the local NAACP. He's also a member of the Quality Coalition, the Community Coalition for Quality Policing. SOC is a member of that group as well, and he's a member of the CCC, as is Jamaal, and he'll be talking about the 21st century policing plan that was the result of President Obama's work around policing, and he'll also be giving us an introduction into the new era of public safety report and plan. Before I bring Jamaal on, I want to make a critical announcement. The decision about whether Chief Morales stays or not is being made today at 4:30 by the Fire and Police Commission in an executive session. That means in a private session. And so there's a resolution to take a vote on whether they're going to dismiss them, demote them, or discipline them. And so right after that is a regular session of the FPC. So Andrea will share the links to both of those meetings, and pay attention. We'll find out. If you recall, it took a couple of sessions for them to work on the process of reviewing him, which ended in them giving him 11 directives with different deadlines. And so I assume they'll be reviewing that and whether he complied with that, and then making decisions after that. So stay tuned. We'll also have those links on our Facebook page and here. All right, folks, huge piece to pay attention to. All right, now I'd like to invite on a great colleague, Jamaal Smith. Hola, Jamaal.
Hey, how you doing, Tammy?
I'm doing good. We got a big topic to cover, and so I kept telling people there's no way in 5 days, half an hour each day, we're going to cover it, but at least if we can start helping folks understand the players, the efforts, where they'll have voice and input and accountability, we can help, because there's so much information, right? I've been telling our guests, for our residents to understand, what does defunding mean, or diverting funding, or reform, or it's a spectrum. It's massive. It has such a long history. So we're all just trying to do a little piece of education and relationship with the community and helping them to understand. So, right. Jamaal, talk about first, before we dig into the topic, your role at OVP and a little bit about OVP in general.
Sure. So my title is the Violence Prevention Manager for the Office of Violence Prevention. So within my work, my tasks are centered around public policy advocacy, community engagement, strategic partnerships, to elevate violence prevention efforts, and the implementation and training on the Blueprint for Peace throughout those efforts. So as a lot of it is really just centered around how do we figure out the most effective and efficient ways to elevate violence prevention work to where we're stopping it before. Obviously, that's the whole idea around prevention. Is stopping it before it happens versus the aspect of intervening after. So a little bit about the Office of Violence Prevention itself. Most people don't know Office of Violence Prevention was created in 2008. This was an initiative that was created by Mayor Tom Barrett with the idea of figuring out what are the best ways to solve gun violence and other forms of violence that were happening across the city. But within that discussion, there had to be also the elevation of systemic and structural and institutional violence as well, right? And looking at that through the impact of racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, all those different isms that have impacted specific populations, and how that continues to manifest itself today, and how that should be also deemed as violence. The idea is really with the Office of Violence Prevention is our vision statement is just making Milwaukee a safe and resilient city where residents are valued, protected, and promoted, right? So we're trying to get to a point where this is not just work or a life that is being lived just for specific people, but every person in the city of Milwaukee is living their best lives, which is actually the mission of the health department, is living your best life. So trying to get to the point where we're really evaluating how system structures and institutions have played a role in the violence that we have seen as well, and looking at violence through a public health lens, not just a punitive measure, right?
Yeah.
So when we have a conversation around the social determinants of health, we have to realize that segregation is violence, poverty is violence, education inequity is violence, lack of quality health care is violence, food deserts, violence, underemployment, all of that is violence, right? Because we're seeing that it's really happening to large numbers, in large numbers to specific populations, most notably the Black and Brown communities, right? So really attempting to reform and change many of the policies, practices, and procedures within systems, which then trickle down to improving the quality of life within those communities.
And just a little bit before we tackle the whole law enforcement and the blueprint for peace. Talk just a little bit about the different departments or programs and services that you have, because it's expanded and it's deepened. It's really impressive.
Yeah. So outside of myself, we have our recast programs, which is resilient communities after stress and trauma. So there's a true focus on dealing with mental health and the impact of trauma within our communities, whether that's generationally or within its current context. You know, many times when we have a conversation about trauma, people don't understand how that's generational and how it continues to manifest itself today. And our program director, Arnita Holloman, who's also a licensed counselor, leads that program and trying to infuse a lot of work centered around mental health and trauma services. And in connection to that, we have our trauma response team, which focuses on ways in which we help to assist young people who have been exposed to gun violence. So children who have either seen gun violence or have been direct victims of gun violence, being able to provide the necessary resources in order for them to be able to, to cope with seeing such a traumatic experience, right? So, and we work that through District 5. MPD has been a partner in that and being able to provide referrals. They've provided over 90% of the referrals to our trauma response team, mostly within District 5 and District 7, but we will also have the idea of expanding to District 2 and making sure that in other areas on the South Side as well. But making sure that we're getting those referrals in to provide services to those who have been impacted by trauma through gun violence. D'Angelo Cargile is our youth injury and violence coordinator. He does a lot of work around the Beyond the Bell project, which focuses on after school programming. He's been working with the county on the We Care crew and getting resources to families through the county parks, doing a lot of work around male mentorship. So really trying to expand the ways in which we're addressing a lot of the mentorship amongst young men in the city, but not just young men. We're also focusing on young women as well, and we would like to expand that across the city. Vanisha Newman does work around our suicide prevention. So a lot of work has been really connected. Obviously, the connection of mental health and its impact on suicide has really been a driver within the work that both Arnita and Vanisha have been doing. And they've been doing a lot of work together to really elevate the ways in which we handle mental health services for the suicide prevention piece. And Karen Tyler is our injury and violence coordinator, prevention coordinator, centered around domestic violence and sexual assault. She is the point of contact for the Milwaukee Commission on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, which meets monthly to talk about ways in which to address the impact of domestic violence within our city, which unfortunately we have seen drastically increase during this COVID period. And really trying to focus on the best strategies, whether that's policy-wise or community-based or organizational-wide, on addressing domestic violence in Milwaukee.
I wanted people to hear that, because people don't understand the breadth and the depth of the work that you all are doing. All right, folks, you've heard tons of programs and resources. Jamaal, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you all for any of those programs and services?
Simple. My direct line, my office number 414-286-6264. My cell phone is 414-704-5546. And my email is jasmith@milwaukee.gov. So anyone can get in contact with me, and I will be sure to connect them to the proper staff, depending on whatever the issues are.
And is there any cost for those services, Jamaal?
Absolutely not.
Right.
Nope.
And then do you have any of those services in Spanish? Like, can people access those services in Spanish?
Well, the good thing is we have part of Recast is we hired another coordinator, Vanessa Ramos, who has really been helping us as far as increasing our bilingual services. We have our trauma response team is bilingual, so it's also in Spanish as well as English. We're still trying to make sure that we have all of our programs that have the bilingual services as well. And we, like I said, we definitely want to make sure that we have a trauma response team that is on the South Side working through District 2 or any other police district that is able to assist us in their work. But we are definitely attempting to really expand our services so that we make sure that they're bilingual. Yes.
But right now, folks can call, and Vanessa can take calls in Spanish and help get people services. Great. Let's tackle this massive issue now of public safety, law enforcement reform, and the blueprint for peace.
Okay. So when we talk about public safety, we have to understand that public safety is not just wrapped within law enforcement. Right. There has been this long-standing generational ideology that the only way to enforce public safety is the punishment industry, whether that's through policing or through the criminal justice system or what have you. But we also have to be willing to evaluate and expand our mindset on what public safety actually looks like. So when we talk about public safety, we have to be willing to look at establishing economic opportunity, because that contributes to public safety as well. People have jobs with sustainable wages that contribute to public safety. Affordable housing, right? Whether that's people who are eligible for home ownership or those who are getting into any affordable housing programs that exist. We also know that that is a part of establishing public safety, because in this city, even though we're a majority minority city, the home ownership for Black and brown residents throughout Milwaukee is under 10%. So making sure that we're able to get to the point where people have the opportunity for home ownership, which has been always called the great equalizer, where people can build wealth and equity, is another opportunity for elevating public safety. Right, developing programs, quality programs for youth development. Right, I talked a little bit earlier about the Beyond the Bell program, the We Care program, the male mentorship programs, making sure we have mentorship programs for young ladies, getting them involved in career tracks as well as college opportunities. You know, all of that is contributing to public safety. And then also at the end of the day, how are we creating programs within the community that really bring about neighbors coming together and establishing what are the values that they have and would like to make sure that they're uplifting within their own community. So that is something that becomes not just the responsibility of the neighborhoods, but now they take ownership over that because they've created the values that they would like to see within that community. That is public safety, right? So it's getting to the point where it's not just the dependency on law enforcement or the criminal justice system, but really attempting to bring all of the different entities and being in multi-sector organizations to the table to contribute to this. So whether that's the MMAC, right, or business executives, community-based organizations, nonprofits, everyone has to be at the table for transformative public safety.
Yeah, agreed. And it makes so much sense because we have a lot of expertise in our community that can better handle some situations than sending a police officer that may escalate a situation or not be able to handle it. And so help folks understand. So, you know, people are like the idea of defunding or diverting funds seems very scary to some of our residents. Others are totally understanding and supportive. Let's help folks understand, what does that really mean practically?
So defunding the police essentially means just changing the scope of responsibility. There are some things that police just should not be required to do. Like, for example, when it comes to addressing people who have mental health issues within the community, that should be connected to counselors or psychologists, or bringing in like the MUT team or those types of services in order to truly be able to provide the necessary assistance for those who are suffering from mental health crisis. When it comes to home ownership, calling the police shouldn't be the response for that. Or homelessness, calling the police shouldn't be the response for dealing with homeless. We should be contacting county services or city services that would help to get some homeless people within some housing, some sort of shelter, to ensure that there's some safety there, in addition to them being provided the resources necessary, for them to survive and also live. Right? That shouldn't be a contact for the police. Right? So it's really just focusing on changing the scope of responsibility for police. There's just some things that police should not be responsible for. And it's not to say, even though there is a conversation, there are people who are talking about abolition. That's really more of a visionary aspect versus reality. When we talk about abolition, when there's no need to depend on cages and cops and things of that nature, that means we've absolutely transformed the entire landscape of this country so that there's not any dependency there. But given where we are in reality, we know that's not really something that we should be talking about in terms of abolition. But when it comes to, that's a hard discussion around abolition. I don't want to sway anybody in any direction. But when it comes to divesting and investing, it's just really looking at ways in which funds within the city budget can be better invested in different programs. And we realize that giving one entity 48% of the city budget is just not feasible. And that is not, and it has not proven to be effective as well. I mean, we can even look at the NYPD. NYPD gets $6 billion a year. And there's a violence interruption program there that's called Life Camp that has been very responsible for violence interruption and violence prevention. And they only get 36 million. So again, right, we have to be able to weigh the scales and the ways in which we're investing our money to programs that we know can be very effective and really help elevate the impact of violence prevention
and safety. And so folks understand there are groups calling for the removal of the police as we know it as a function. And then there are people calling for, hey, let's really look at how we spend our resources for safety in the community, and where are the police, where is some type of a system of a police better utilized and other departments better utilized to respond to things as you just shared. And let's be real, there's some people who are like, we want to keep the same system we have. That's right. There's the spectrum, and what we're trying to do this week is help y'all understand what's out there so you can land on where you are as a resident and where you want to support. But it's important for everyone to understand the whole, not just have a reaction to it, but learn, listen, contribute so that you all can decide. Talk to us a little bit about some of the aspects of the Blueprint for Peace, Jamaal. I know we were involved, SOC was involved in the steering committee to create it. We have done a debut of it. We got input on it, but let's keep that alive with folks because they invested in that as well. Let's remind folks some of those aspects of the Blueprint for Peace, which you've talked about actually.
Yeah, really did. Actually. So the Blueprint for Peace was a document that was created in 2016 with the idea of getting community input on public safety and violence prevention. We have seen historically, whether in Milwaukee or abroad, that governmental entities have always taken the bureaucratic approach of telling communities what's best for them and saying, this is what we want to see in your community, this is what we're going to put in your communities, versus asking the people who live in the communities what's best. So the process was being able to truly have conversations around violence prevention and public safety with community-based organizations such as SOC, business executives, education representatives, residents, youth groups, which was really beautiful, really having the young perspective at the table as well, which has so often been ignored. And we really, really need to change that approach. But multiple thousands of people had the ability to have this conversation and talk about what were some of the biggest issues within their communities, in addition to what were some solutions that they would like to see in order to address the violence within their communities. And what really came out of that, outside of this, the conversation with interpersonal or communal violence, right? And in that, we're talking about gun violence, domestic violence, and the sort. But the biggest things, the biggest focus in that conversation was really systemic and structural violence, and talking about the impact of race and racism that has obviously been very much prevalent within the city of Milwaukee, and knowing the impact on Black and Brown communities and how that has contributed to much of the conditions of what we see within our communities, whether that's going back to the deindustrialization period. Mass incarceration, we know, is a huge ordeal here in the state of Wisconsin, having the highest rates of Black male incarceration in the country. But what most people don't understand is that Latino men are right behind Black males when it comes to incarceration in Wisconsin. The rates for Latino men incarceration is nearly as high in the state of Wisconsin as it is for Black men. So, just being able to have the conversations then about systems and structures and put it into this document, knowing that this was the responsibility and the voices of the community. This wasn't something that the Office of Violence Prevention did. We facilitated the conversations, but this was an approach from the community itself to have conversations on ways in which to really change public safety and violence prevention in the city. So within this, we were able to craft 6 goals that came out of these discussions that were common themes, similar to the CCC work that we did, right? Just common themes, because the responses were very similar, regardless of what neighborhoods people we were talking to. So the first one is stop the shooting, stop the violence. So being able to build neighborhood safety programs in which neighbors come together and being able to focus on ways to deal with conflict resolution within their communities. The second one is promoting healing and restorative justice. So that goes to the aspect of mental health and trauma reduction. A lot of the work that Arnita has been doing with Recast and others across the city have been doing. Goal 3 is support children, youth, and families. So making sure that young people are being supported and elevated within their development, within programs, education, employment opportunities, training, mentorship, and the likes. Goal 4 is promoting economic opportunity, which I think is, that's something that really, really needs to be connected to violence prevention. And there is the opportunity for home ownership, employment. So addressing the issues with unemployment and underemployment. Most people look at the issues of poverty and just think people don't want to work. We've actually had federal representatives who said there's a culture of laziness, a culture of people who are irresponsible and people who just don't want to work. Well, then when you go and look at the data, you'll see that over 50% of the people within the city of Milwaukee are underemployed versus unemployed. Yeah. Right. So that means people are working. They're just not being properly compensated for it, which also contributes to violence that happens within communities because we're still having an issue of poverty. Goal 5 is fostering safer neighborhoods. So again, in that aspect, we're talking about, beautification projects, ways in which we're helping to develop green space, right? Working with programs such as our 414 Life team, which is centered around violence interruption. That's a partnership that we have with Freighter and the Medical College of Wisconsin. Kind of similar to the Life Camp program that I mentioned that's in New York, and it's based off of the Cure Violence model in Chicago. And contrary to popular opinion, there's a lot of work around violence prevention happening in Chicago, just like it is here in Milwaukee. And the final one is strengthening capacity and coordination of violence prevention efforts. So it's these types of conversations and building partnerships with organizations across the city, and realizing that that their work or their focus within the organizations is directly connected to violence prevention.
Yeah.
So again, it's not just the over reliance on police and the criminal justice system, but there are other areas that can contribute to violence prevention as well, so that we're not even having a conversation about law enforcement and criminal justice and the justice system as much as we do.
Yeah. Good stuff. It's a very interrelated issue to prevent violence. And after all, that's the best kind of safety. And you don't have to deal with the results of not responding to the needs. Jamaal, is there anything you want to add before we close out this segment? Things you want people to think about as we move forward as a community?
Sure. For those who are interested in reading the blueprint and how it can be applied on neighborhood level as well as community-based, you can go to www.414life, 414 the area code, life.com. There's the copy of blueprint right there online, as well as other resources through the Office of Violence Prevention. But other than that, these are the type of conversations that are always necessary to provide clarity around not just many of the statements that are being made in terms of police reform and defund, but also what true violence prevention looks like. And the fact that there are multiple entities who have been working towards violence prevention all across Milwaukee, North Side, South Side, even parts of the East Side, right? But just know that there's so many efforts that are happening in order to truly elevate public safety and violence prevention. And I'm just hoping that there will be a willingness to learn more about these programs, and then also figure out ways in which you could support their work, whether that's volunteering or whether that's financial contributions, whatever that is. Now, obviously, you can't give to us as a government entity, but we mean community-based organizations. Being able to support them in their efforts as well, so that they can expand capacity around violence prevention work.
Let's see if we have any questions before we let you go, Jamaal.
Okay.
Say hi to some folks.
I hope everyone is doing well.
Hola, Elsa. Oh, here's a question.
Okay.
People who don't support defunding the police often say they don't support it because they fear crime would go up and they wouldn't feel safe. How can we get those folks to adjust their frame of thinking on this issue?
Well, I think the first part of that is people realizing that police is an intervention service, right? But the crime has already happened when police are called. So instead of making sure that people reaching out and calling on police, there are other things that we should be investing in that help from the front end. There's we talk about public health. We look at violence from a public health aspect, and there's a strategy that's called Public Health 3.0, and it's 3-tiered. The first one is obviously on prevention work, so supporting those efforts and those entities that elevate prevention. The second one is intervention. So then, if by some chance this violence does occur, what are some strategies that can be implemented, which then prevents this from happening further, right? Whether that's, like retaliatory violence or what have you. And the third aspect of that is healing and restoration. So ensuring that people are in a position to heal from the trauma that they've experienced from the violence that happens, and being able to figure out ways to navigate that in order to live their best lives. And in that, there are many organizations who have been focusing on that prevention model, and knowing that there's an opportunity to truly invest in programs that elevate prevention on the front end, then means that there's less money that we would have to really be using to alleviate violence on the back end, right? Because the prevention work has been elevated, right? So, and some people just realize you're not going to get 100% conversion in that conversation, because people have become so reliant on policing, right? And the whole aspect is, it's not only just the responsibility of law enforcement anyway. It's also about ways what do you want to see in your communities, and how are you enforcing that, and how are you building with your neighbors and community residents, and figuring out the best strategies that you all can come with to ensure that people know that we are not going to tolerate crime and violence happening in these areas, right? And that's another way in which it's kind of hard for people who are involved in crime or who perpetuate crime to come into neighborhoods where residents have already established the the atmosphere and the expectations there, because then it's going to be easy for all those residents to come against those who perpetuate crime and ensure that they're being put out, right? So it's not just the dependency on the law enforcement. Neighbors can take their neighborhoods in their own hands as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, that the police are generally activated once a crime is already underway.
Crime is already done.
But there hardly is any work in crime prevention to stop that from happening. And so you're constantly responding to symptoms instead of, root causes.
Right.
Here's another question. Is the Blueprint for Peace available in Spanish?
Unfortunately, no.
I think there's a summary. There may be a
summary of it, not the entire Blueprint for Peace.
And how has violence? This is Uriel. Hola, Uriel. Hola, Trine. Hola, Marianne. How has violence prevention work changed since COVID-19? We'll take that last question and close out the segment. How has the work had to change, Jamaal?
It hasn't.
It hasn't.
The work has not changed. We've actually been more busy during the COVID season than we were prior to. And I think part of that is because of the impact of COVID and how COVID has contributed to cabin fever, which has led to a lot of violence happening, whether that's domestic violence or even gun violence.
We've talked about that here, the spike in domestic
Right.
violence. So I assume all that's happening as you all are trying to abide by the CDC safety mask, but the work continues.
The work still continues. We've been in neighborhoods, we've been at scenes, but we've still, we've been protected, mask and all, and hand sanitizer, everything, making sure we have masks for people who may be out in the community as well, when those incidents occur. But at the same time, the work doesn't stop, and it hasn't. So we've been continuing to just push towards really elevating this violence prevention efforts.
Well, thanks for being with us. We appreciate you. We have so much work to do ahead of us. I look forward to digging in.
Absolutely.
Be safe, brother.
All right, my sister. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
All right.
All right. Before I hand it over to Marlene, I want to give you a peek at what's happening next week. So next week, we have an exciting week. We are going to talk about the new generation of organizers, right? And so the generation before me is where we see a lot of our legacy leaders, and some who have been on the program, Dr. Baez, etc. And then there's my generation, and then there's the generation after me and the generation after that. And so what we're going to do next week is really talk with the new generation of organizers. So far, what we have to look forward to is we will have, and I want to remind you that Tuesday is our all Spanish program. Remember, we're doing, generally it's on Wednesdays, but this week and next week, we had to move the all Spanish program to Tuesdays. And so why? Because this week we had Molly on Wednesday. She doesn't speak Spanish. Next week, Senator Baldwin is going to be with us on Wednesday for a special feature just with her. But Tuesday, it'll be all in Spanish. And we have the YES program of Voces, their young program, their young people's program. Youth Empowered in the Struggle is going to be with us on Tuesday. And then we have on Friday, we have Leaders Igniting Transformation, Dakota Hall, the executive director from that group. We're hoping to have Block and at the African American Roundtable and a couple other folks on. But just so you know, next week we're going to talk with the new generation of organizers and their views on the work, on the intergenerational great things and challenges, and weigh in on some of the issues as well. So you don't want to miss it. All right, folks, I'm going to hand it back to Marlene. Be safe.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you to Jamaal Smith. That was a really important conversation that many of us have been wanting to hear lately, especially with what's been going on. I love how he talked about the Public Health 3.0 prevention model. That's definitely a model that needs to be adapted by many nonprofits and many, and not just nonprofits, but for-profits that are trying to implement interventions on minority populations, especially in Milwaukee. So we're going to kind of give a moment right now for individuals to ask any questions that they haven't. So if you have any questions for us right now, you can go ahead and post those in the comments, and then we can try to have them answered for you to the best of our ability, or we can send them off to Jamaal Smith and maybe he can have them answered for you as well. So I don't see any questions for right now, so we're just gonna move on to the next section. So for right now, we're gonna go over the coronavirus segment, which is usually what I cover. So I'm gonna start off by talking about our mask up challenge. So I want to challenge all of you to wear a mask and take a picture of yourself wearing the mask and put it up on your social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and tag 3 of your friends or family members and ask them to do the same thing. What this is going to do is it's going to help give awareness to the fact that everyone should be wearing masks, not only for yourself, but for all of us. It's a way to build community within our community, and it's a way to prevent COVID-19 from spreading. So put hashtag mask up in your posts, and we hope to see much more of these come up as we move along, especially with the current mask ordinance that's been implemented. So some news I have for you is that according to the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, there's the State Poison Center and Health Agency have issued a warning about certain hand sanitizers that you're using right now. So as the use of hand sanitizers has increased during COVID-19, so has the number of calls to poison centers related to possible toxic alcohol exposures. So more hand sanitizers being produced either at home or in other countries, and it can contain various chemicals and alcohols that can be dangerous if not deadly. There has been a dramatic increase in hand sanitizer products labeled to contain ethanol, which is also known as ethyl alcohol, but that have actually tested positive for methanol contamination. Methanol is a type of wood alcohol, and it's a substance that it can be very toxic when it's absorbed in your skin or ingested, and it can be very life-threatening. So according to the New Mexico Poison Control, recently reported 3 deaths and 1 case of the permanent blindness due to ingestion of methanol contaminated hand sanitizers. So what can you do about this? You know, like you're just like, okay, what can I do? So what you can do is that you can buy hand sanitizers with the current labels. So you can look at the back of the label and see if it's been tested by the FDA and found to contain methanol. If it's labeled to contain if it's labeled to have had microbial contamination, which means any bacterial contamination, if it's being recalled by the manufacturer or distributor, what that means is that it's been taken off the shelves in like CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and what that means is there's something wrong with the product, so they need to fix it before they can put it back on the shelf. So don't buy those. And if it has less than a required amount of ethyl alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, or benzalkonium chloride. Those are very complicated terms, but I will definitely make a post so you guys can keep a lookout for those kinds of chemicals in your hand sanitizer. So that's on that for the sanitizers and poison center and health agency issuing the warning for some sanitizers. Governor Evers, another update, Governor Evers issued $32 million to go for COVID-19 testing sites for the UW system at universities. So that means UW Milwaukee will have testing sites available to individuals who are symptomatic or seem to be symptomatic, for those that are staying in the dorms and for those that are just students on campus. So you can take a look at all of that information in the links that I have we've posted in the comments for you. But that's all of the updates that I have for you today. Keep a lookout for the different types of alcohol, different types of sanitizers that you can use, and the different types of chemicals you should take a look out for before using that sanitizer. That being said, I'd like to pass on the torch to Gabe. She's our civic manager, and she's going to give you a civic and census update.
Thanks for the torch. I take it happily. So I just want to announce that today is the last day that you can request an absentee ballot online. So go to myvote.wisconsin.gov and request that absentee ballot. And then I just want to let folks know who have already received their absentee ballot that these are the locations that you can drop them off, and they are also the early voting locations that you can go and vote in person to avoid long lines at the election, or the day of the election, coming up next week on the 11th of August. So the express sites here are the Zyder Municipal Building, Manitoba School, and Midtown Center, and that's until this weekend, Sunday, August 9th, from up till Friday, it'll be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and then Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then more limited sites, which means one voter at a time. Those locations are Bayview Library, Mitchell Street Library, and Zablocki Library. That'll end this Saturday, August 8th. And today and Saturday will be the last days for those from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. because it's only Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for those sites. Keep in mind too that staff at those locations can sign as your witness on your absentee ballot. You can register to vote at those locations. Voting assistance is always available. And again, you can still request your absentee ballot at myvote.wisconsin.gov. Today is the last day, so get those requests in. And then anyone that has not mailed their absentee ballot yet, I would highly encourage you to drop it off at one of these locations instead of mailing it back, because we're now less than a week away from the election, and we want to make sure you get those ballots in on time. So try to drop them off at those locations instead of mailing them in to avoid any issues with postage. And then also keep in mind that we have these lovely census yard signs that you can get from us to rep the census on your house or in your neighborhood. So we have them in English. They look like this. Just has the website for completing the census online and then the phone number. And then also in Spanish. So please comment, message us, email us. If you're interested in getting one of these for your house or for anyone that you know, if they want one as well, they are welcome to request them. We've got about 80 left still, so we want to get those out hopefully by this weekend. So for those that have already said they want one, those will get dropped off this weekend. I'll be in touch with you very soon. But yeah, get a yard sign and rep the census, and just help remind folks that it's important and you are thinking of the census and encouraging other people to do it. Other than that, August 11th, so the day of the election, is going to be the first day that census takers go out into the community. So representatives of the Census Bureau will be going out and starting to knock on doors. They are held to the same privacy laws that anyone that's doing it online. All of your information is going to be private, so they have sworn to keeping information private. But this is going to be a really great way for getting yourself counted if you haven't done it online, on the phone, or by mail yet. If you don't want someone to come knocking on your door, get that census done, get yourself counted, and know that you are doing a really amazing thing by getting yourself counted, because you're going to help secure funding for your community and political representation for your community. So they are going out August 11th. Keep that in mind. So if someone's knocking on your door, you should answer it. If you haven't done the census, please answer. And especially if they're going out in our Southside neighborhoods, likely the person that is going to be out is going to be a Spanish speaker as well. So keep that in mind. Just remember that all of the information is private. They will not ask you anything about citizenship, nothing like that. So I'm just going to leave you all with a census video that just reiterates some of the things that I've been saying, and hopefully to inspire you a little more. And then Marlene will be back with you after that.
There will be parties again soon, and family gatherings. There will be parades and sporting events and concerts. To help our communities when they come back together, respond to the 2020 census now. Spend a few minutes online today to impact the next 10 years of healthcare, infrastructure, and education. Go to 2020census.gov and respond today to make America's tomorrow brighter. It's time to shape our future.
All right, everyone. So that was a lot of really important information that all of us definitely needed to hear. Remember to do your census and remember to vote. It is very critical in deciding our future together and our communities and what sources and resources we have access to. So that being said, I'd like to move on to our daily survey, and then we'll move on to another reminders segment. So our daily survey for today is has no incentive, so just wanted to let you guys know that. But
has this live forum been informative and useful to you? What part of the forum could be improved or changed to make it better? Please take a quick survey that's located in the comments section so that we can keep 3 o'clock with SOC going for residents. Thank you for tuning in.
All right, so I just want to give out some reminders for the rest of the week and for next week. So this week, of course, we went over law enforcement reform and defunding. For tomorrow, we have Fred Royal on. He's the president of the NAACP, the Milwaukee branch, and he's also a part of the CCC and the CCQP. And he's gonna be going over some important information related to law enforcement reform. And then next week, we have some really great guests for you guys, and we can let you know all about those tomorrow. And then we also want to let you guys know that we stand in solidarity with protesters and families right now, and our thoughts and prayers go out with those who've been impacted by COVID-19, those of you who have been ill by COVID-19, those of you who are currently ill from COVID, and those family members that have passed from COVID. Our hearts go out to you, and our thoughts and prayers. So I'd like to end the forum by leaving you with a Funder partner thank you video. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's forum, and we hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Hello, viewers. I am Esperanza Gutierrez, a longtime resident of the near South Side. We would like to thank everyone for supporting our 3 o'clock with SOC live show and for completing our SOC survey. In addition to thanking our residents for tuning in and sharing our show, we would also like to thank the following sponsors: Wisconsin Voices, Community Development Block Grant, Neo Philanthropy State Infrastructural Fund, the Movement Voter Project, the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, the Silber Foundation, City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention, the Tithe Foundation, the City of Milwaukee Promise Zone, and all the faithful individuals who support SOC through their personal donations. Thank you. Gracias.